Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for the Q&A with the GitKraken product team. My name is Jonathan Silva. I'm a product manager here with the GitKraken team, and I'm joined by our panel members. I'll go ahead and introduce each of them. First up, we're joined up by Dan Suchava, our CTO. Hey, Dan.
Hi, Jonathan.
Next, we have Jeff Schinella, our director of product.
Hi.
And then we have Justin Roberts, our director of product.
Jonathan.
All right. Well, panel, I have a number of questions submitted by users and also just some general topics to kind of get this discussion going. And the first one has to do with the look and feel of GitKraken. So I know I've seen some tweets about people comparing GitKraken to Guitar Hero with its colorful array. And I just want to maybe we'll start with you, Justin. Maybe you can talk about, your approach to the look and feel of the GitKraken app.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why we decided to build GitKraken in the first place was that the environment for Git clients was pretty bad back when we started. And surprisingly, there were no Git clients that even had a dark theme. So it was kind of an easy win for us to start with something that felt like a developer tool and just start with a pretty basic dark palette. And I think that's something that immediately set us apart from other clients, but has since kind of evolved into kind of like what makes GitKraken look like it does. When you have a dark palette and you're trying to have some colorful things like the graph that we built, you start to define this kind of like style around, these bright colors against a dark background. And I think when you see that, that's kind of what defines what GitKraken is. So really just starting almost all of our designs with dark theme first kind of defines where we're taking that style.
Awesome. And then I also want to get your take on that, Jeff, on the look and feel of GitKraken there.
So I think one of the things, it's not Guitar Hero for sure, but that would be cool if we had the Guitar Hero like scrolling and Easter egg thing. We've talked about that in the past. But one of the things I think, Justin, you've mentioned in the past too, is initially early on, that as design approach was inspired by almost the subway style maps of different cities and different stuff. Liking those connections of nodes and being able to like look at a status of a Git repo and follow along a pathway of stop sort things that have happened in your journey of changing the code was really kind of one of those major things that gave direction to the team who kind of built it out. So yeah.
Yeah, and I remember when we were doing some sort of like mood boards on marketing around GitKraken, that was kind of like a heavy influencer in some of the additional marketing material that we had designed, both in like the design of Keith himself that you can see on all of our shirts, but also in kind of like the type that we decided to use for the GitKraken logo type, all heavily influenced by kind of like 60s, like very clean graphic design, subway system maps and that kind of stuff. So we were influenced by that a lot in the kind of definitely with the graph and in some of the marketing materials we developed early on.
One of the other key features I hear users talk about is this idea of dragging and dropping. So in the GitKraken graph, you can drag and drop a branch to start a whole bunch of other operations. I think it's helped me learn about Git and what it means to trigger a merge or a rebase because the direction matters. Can you talk about, similar to the look and feel, maybe this time we'll start with Jeff, where did the idea of a drag and drop kind of get introduced, and anything else you want to speak to that?
Well, I mean, drag and drop has been around for a while. We kind of, I think more of just how can we make it easier for people to approach changes to the repositories without having to like type, or traditionally with the CLI and terminal, you would not have these visualizations. So I think when I think about it, one of the early talks I watched on Git, I don't remember the name. Is it Tinker Toys or one of these blocks where there was a structure built, and the idea of just a branch is pointing at a node in this structure, and then when you want to check out a different commit or move the branch, you just move that node to a different move that branch label to a different node, right? So it makes sense, I think, from interacting with a visual graph in the same way that you would want to like almost like grab it and drag it to like a new location, because that's exactly what's sort of happening at Git. It's taking that pointer and moving it to a different spot. So
yeah, and when you talk about visualizing things, which is, you know, a big part of what makes GitKraken GitKraken is that you can visualize what you're looking at. Is being able to see and visualize what a commit looks like and what a branch looks like, even though that might not technically be exactly what it is. The fact that you can visualize that and understand it, and then discover things that you can do that you might not be able to do if you were using just the CLI or you had to go find what a command was. You know, just by dragging a branch onto another branch and letting go, you get a context menu that says, hey, here are all the things that you can do between these two branches or these two commits. So it also offers some discoverability in like, what can I actually do with Git that you might not know if you just had to go look through a list of commands in the help page or something.
So next up, I have here a question from a user. I'll paraphrase a little bit, but effectively the user is asking, you know, what are our plans for integrating with Azure DevOps Server? But before I guess we get into the answer to that question, Dan, I wanted to ask you, maybe can you talk about what the difference is between using one of our GitKraken integrations with the Git hosting service and versus just connecting over SSH and HTTPS?
Yeah, so generally speaking, when you set up your integration, you use an integration with a specific provider like GitHub or GitLab. What you get with that is the ability to use provider-specific actions or things like pull requests, for example. If you want to use pull requests within GitKraken, you have to set up the integration, and then you can view your pull requests. You know, you can create pull requests from within GitKraken. Now you can even like review pull requests and even like merge them. So just in general, it gives you the ability to do certain things like that, or like even fork a remote, for example. You can fork it directly from inside GitKraken rather than having to go out to GitHub and do it from there. So it gives you a lot of power to do a lot of things inside GitKraken. And then with GitHub in particular, you can also use your GitHub login to log into GitKraken as well. But if we don't have certain, I mean, we have a lot of providers that we integrate with, but if we don't, you can still use SSH and HTTPS to do, you know, regular Git commands and stuff.
And you can even have different profiles set up to connect to different integrations there. Jeff, I'll bounce this one to you. So can you talk about maybe what factors do we take into consideration when exploring which new Git hosting services to connect to, or maybe any other feedback that might come in similar to this?
We roll dice and we map each of the providers to help. No, just kidding. We don't do that. We have a few channels that we reach out through. I think the big one, and we've sort of just started this, there's a lot of different integrations, you know, AWS Code Commit, Azure, and there's limited time and resources, obviously, so we can't integrate with everything. But what we're trying to do now is have a place where your voice can sort of be heard at Feature Upvote website. I don't know if we can show that, but if we can, that's great. You can go there. I think there actually is an issue for the Azure DevOps integration. It's kind of being upvoted now. So we're looking at that space and seeing, you know, not only how many people want these sort of integrations, but what the types of specifics they want for the integration to be supporting. We also do annual surveys throughout the year, and we have regular conversations with our customers through sort of, we call them user experience sessions. And as we talk to customers, as we have the survey data, as we're kind of monitoring, you know, what's going on, we are building this backlog of, you know, integrations and ordering them based on priority and all of that exercise.
All right. Hopefully, I'm sure that'll help the user out. They can go upvote that and much more on feature upvote. I think that's feedback.gitkraken.com. Okay, so speaking of features, let's talk about existing features. I'm sure there's a number of features that each of you use in your own use case with GitKraken. And I'm curious to know what you feel is either the most underutilized feature in GitKraken that would help out other users, or just maybe your favorite pet feature that you think would help other users. Dan, I think I'll start with you on this one.
Okay. So yeah, I have a couple that I want to talk about. First one that I like a lot is blame. And I don't know if a lot of people know that we have that feature in GitKraken, but it's a very powerful feature that lets you kind of look at the history. And I don't use it to go blame people, but it's good to be able to go in there and see who's made the changes and when the change was made, so you can track down when certain things, like when something broke, you can kind of go through the history and really dig down into when the change happened and potentially who did it. So that's one that I really like. One that I think it's underutilized that I know people kind of ask for is the activity logs. That is a little tiny button at the bottom, on the bottom bar, on the footer bar of GitKraken that looks like a menu, but it basically shows you what, when you perform actions inside the client, you don't, some people who are used to the CLI and seeing what happens, GitKraken doesn't really show you. It's just a visual tool and it does a lot of stuff in the background. So you can click this activity log button and it pops up a window that shows you, as close as possible, kind of what GitKraken did and what operations it performed when you perform your actions.
And I think there's like a different modes, different levels of verbosity. I don't even know if that's a word.
Yeah, verbosity. Yeah, there is. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a very useful kind of tool for people who are used to the CLI and may want to kind of understand what GitKraken is doing behind the scenes.
Justin, I think I already know yours, but I'll ask anyway. What feature do you think is underutilized?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's the fuzzy finder, which is, I think that we have some issues with people even discovering that it exists, which is why we're doing some things to improve that in the upcoming release. One being that we're renaming it to the command palette, which is a more familiar term that's used in IDEs, basically for this thing that you can pull up with a quick keyboard shortcut that gives you access to a lot of commands that the application offers without having to go and actually click them. So for users who might be getting comfortable with GitKraken already, and even clicking and dragging something becomes slower than what they want to do, we have this command palette that you can access with Command or Control P that just pops up a little search bar, and you can basically run most of the commands that you can do in GitKraken. I use it a lot for checking out branches. If I'm reviewing PRs and the PR is labeled with like the issue number, I can very quickly just do checkout and then start typing the issue number. And because we fuzzy search through the branches that you have available, you don't even have to know exactly what it's named. It just finds it, and then you can check it out without having to go and actually hunt it down in the graph. Dan had mentioned blame and our history views. Those are really easy to access the same way because, again, with the fuzzy search, you can very quickly find a file without having to know the exact path for it. And then we also, many people might not know this, and I guess this is a secondary feature, is that we have an editor inside of GitKraken. And it's really easy to get to a file to edit if you just use the command palette to search for the file and open it up within the editor inside of GitKraken. So I think that for me is like my biggest power user feature that I like, that I'm always surprised when people don't know about. So we're doing what we can to try to make that more discoverable. We're even adding a button into the toolbar that kind of shows people that it exists because it is a powerful feature. And we even took some inspiration from that in the new GitKraken CLI in our autocomplete suggestions, because that ability to fuzzy find through branches and files is so helpful that when we created our auto suggestions feature for the CLI, it very much mirrors what we do in the command palette now. So I'm excited to have kind of both of those features available.
Definitely have a question lined up for you, Justin, on the CLI. So we will get into that in a little bit. But before then, Jeff, want to ask the same question to you about the most underutilized feature.
Well, I don't know about underutilized, but my favorite feature, one of the favorites, is the interactive rebase. I just, from start to finish, that whole process of trying to figure out and understand, how interactive rebase happens for most people in this CLI, and trying to utilize the drag and drop that we've talked about, utilize a really beautiful design where you can have this GUI come up and you can sort of reorder your commits or merge them, squash them together. Rename them, do all of that stuff that is kind of tedious to do outside of a system like that is probably my favorite, just the look, the experience of the whole thing. I think that would be my choice for it. Oh, and undo redo. That's also really
Undo
helpful.
redo.
My favorite. Yeah.
I'll throw out mine for funsies. I like to reset my branches. I don't know if that's a good practice, generally speaking, but I never pull. I almost just right click, reset hard. I'm merciless. Reset hard just to get all the updates. And so if you're someone who that works for your workflow, there's my vote there. I did want to do a quick shout out. If you're a student, or if there's a student in your life, GitKraken is available for free to all of our students through the GitHub Student Pack. And if you're a teacher, and if you have a teacher in your life, same thing. They can get it through the GitKraken for free through the GitKraken Teacher Toolbox. So I'll try to throw up something here on the screen and provide some resources so that if you're someone, or you know someone who fits that bill, they can definitely download GitKraken, get that free license, and get all of the paid features for free. Okay, Justin, I promised that we'd get back to the GitKraken CLI preview. So for those who don't know, so first of all, Justin had a session all about the CLI. And with version 8, we released the GitKraken CLI preview. So Justin, why don't you tell folks about that, and maybe, what inspired the product team to develop such a major feature set?
Yeah, I mean, getting back to kind of the origins of GitKraken, the whole goal was to make things that were super intuitive and super clear to users who might be new to Git or might not be as familiar with Git, but they know all of the commands. So we wanted to expose those in a graphical user interface that made using Git really easy and clear. So from the beginning, we always kind of had this aversion to the CLI. It was kind of like GitKraken versus the CLI was kind of our stance for a long time, because we just, from that initial goal, didn't understand why someone would choose to use the CLI over something like a graphical user interface. And over the years, you start to learn more about the users that use your product and the people that use Git in the industry. And it's clear to us that the CLI is not going anywhere, and there are people who have grown up using the CLI. It's very familiar to them, and there are still some things that are more powerful to do in the CLI. So we didn't want to ignore that segment of the developer world. We didn't want to alienate them and have it be this GUI versus CLI battle anymore. We really wanted to embrace what you can do in the CLI and then apply some of the same kind of usability things that we've done for GitKraken in a CLI tool. So that's why we designed the GitKraken CLI with a terminal that makes doing a lot of things that you would normally do in Git much easier right out of the box. So, a lot of the things that we discovered from interviewing users with terminals is that setup is always really stressful and annoying and difficult, and the amount of packages and things that you can use to customize your terminal are many. And some people still enjoy doing that, but some people might not want to spend that time. So we tried to package a lot of features that we think are helpful for users that are using Git in a CLI inside the GitKraken CLI. Things like I had mentioned autocomplete suggestions. So when you're typing Git commands, rather than having to memorize commands or go dig through the help command for Git to find what command you want to run, we just start to suggest things to you based on where you're at in building this command. And also bringing in things like the visualization that we think is really powerful in GitKraken that we also hear from a lot of CLI users. They use GitKraken because they can visualize things and then they go back to the CLI. So we want to try to create a place where there's less context switching and you can do all of the things that you do with Git, whether that's with CLI or with the graph, all in one place. So that was the kind of primary focus, was take the kind of approach that we did building a GUI and apply those same principles to users of the CLI. And how can we make this as a good of experience as possible that is actually enhanced over a regular CLI rather than just layering things in for no reason. So I think that was kind of the initial goal. I don't know if that's too much or too little. But
beautifully said, Justin. So then that's kind of more the higher level concept. I will say the auto suggest feature in the CLI is killer. It helped, like I was doing git status and I forgot what flag to apply. So just having that drop down list of all the flags was super helpful.
Yeah.
Dan, I did have a question for you related to the CLI. So what were some of the considerations you and the dev team had to take into account when developing the CLI preview?
Yeah, so as Justin mentioned, we're trying to get or we're trying to create a terminal that is way better for people to use the Git CLI in or the GK CLI in, right? So we're trying to convince people to move from their existing, or not move, but at least partially move when they do Git commands or anything like that, any Git related activities, to move from their existing terminal to our terminal. So a couple big considerations are that it has to look and feel familiar. It can't be a whole new experience, right? Like people like their customization in their current terminal in their shell. So we needed to make sure that our terminal uses their shell that they have set up with all their customization as much as possible, so that once they go into our terminal, everything looks and works the same as far as the terminal goes. And then on top of that, we're building all this extra nice experience for them. So that's one consideration. And the second one is obviously performance. We need to make sure that our terminal is performant. Everybody loves the terminal and they love their shells because they're fast. So we need to make sure that our terminal is as fast or faster than what they're currently using. So those two are big things that we have to consider. And then a third thing for kind of new users, I think Justin already touched on this, but out of the box, we want to make sure that we provide an awesome experience for new users to the CLI. Currently, people learning the CLI, learning Git. You can do a lot of stuff with Git, but you need a lot more tools and plugins and themes and stuff to make your whole environment way better. So we want to make sure that eventually we can provide a lot of that stuff out of the box, so people don't have to go, hunting for all these things.
For sure. Thanks, Dan. So Jeff, question for you. How do you see the GitKraken CLI preview evolving over time?
The CLI preview obviously will evolve to become just the CLI. That's the first step. And then we plan on just layering in, I think, a lot more access to some of the enhancements that we're already providing. So, the autocomplete feature that Justin mentioned is really, really useful, and it's really tightly wound with the Git commands. But, it might be enhanced to be able to just perform better or access paths, and you can autocomplete paths down your local machine as you're typing out, references to different repos. So we want to make sure that that's just like bulletproof. The other thing, just as we're pulling in some of these visualizations with the graph using the GK command, that GK command hopefully will expand to be something even more useful and provide access to some more of those resources. One that came up during some user feedback sessions was simply being able to get access to your pull requests, right, or issues. So if you have those integrations tied in with GitKraken, you can use the GK command to either list those PRs, get a quick reference right in the CLI, and start work or check out the branch associated with those PRs without having to shift your context and without having to leave that view. And obviously, more ideas from people would be helpful. We are looking for feedback all the time. So.
Yeah, definitely. If you're watching this during the time of our V8 release, there is a nice feedback button ready for you. We'd love to hear your feedback as we continue to evolve the CLI preview. to eventually just the CLI, the GitKraken CLI. Okay, so just before version 8, we released another big release, version 7.7. This one had the team view. So in the left panel, you now have a team pane where you can select any teams that you belong to. Justin, I'll kick it back to you. What inspired the team feature set that came with version 7.7?
Yeah, so I'm going to do this a lot, but basically thinking back to what our initial goals were when we decided to build GitKraken from the very beginning was to visualize what was happening in your Git repository. And one of the advantages of visualizing things in the graph the way that we do is that it expands your understanding of what's happening in a project beyond just you. It is a visualization of everyone that you are working on a repository with, all of their remotes and how they're connecting to the project, how they're changing the project. So even from that initial step, we were thinking about like, how can this visualize a project and how a team is working on a project from the most basic level. And I think over time that has evolved, and GitKraken had primarily been a single developer tool, even with the ability to view what your teammates are doing inside of a repo. And we wanted to build on top of that because even internally, we would find situations where, you know, maybe there were still inefficiencies in the process of working on repositories that we thought might be helpful. You know, some problems were, you know, it's not easy to get to a branch that someone wants a review from you on, or you're working on something that someone else is and you ultimately get merge conflicts that cause a lot of problems. So how can we try to minimize that? So just starting with those two first points, we wanted to show you who was working on the repository at the same time as you. Talking about merge conflicts, like the easiest way that we found to try to make people aware of merge conflicts or potential merge conflicts was to show them what other people on their team are working on. And you can do that in the graph. You can see when someone has pushed something up to their remote, but that doesn't necessarily tell you that they have been touching the same files that you have. So what we wanted to do was, even before work gets pushed up to the remote, be able to detect when you and someone else on the same repository are making changes to the same file and give you a little warning that says like, hey, you and Jonathan are both working on this file. You might want to just like talk with him and see like, are your changes going to overlap, and try to head off those merge conflicts before they happen. So that was, you know, our kind of first reason for having this list of the people who you're working on a project with. And we decided to have that kind of as the base. And we have a lot of other ideas for what we want to do to help teams work better together, to make it easier for you to communicate with them about things that you're working on inside of a repository, to head off issues like merge conflicts and things like that. Back to my first point, you know, when you want to share a branch, for example, with someone, you usually hop on Slack or whatever and you say, hey, can you go check out my branch? And you have to remember the branch name and you have to type the branch name, and then they have to read the branch name and go back into GitKraken and search for the branch. So the kind of second thing that we have added as a team feature, or it's a team feature, but also really important for anyone that's trying to do work inside of GitKraken, is deep linking into GitKraken itself. So making it really easy to just click, grab a link to a branch, and then paste that link into Slack so that someone could click it and then come back into GitKraken and be on the branch that you were just talking about. So the team view with the conflict detection and deep linking are just some of the first things that we're trying to explore and to work on to make it so that GitKraken is way more powerful when you use it as a team, because it brings in a lot of efficiencies that help you work really well with your teammates, help to minimize errors and merge conflicts and things like that. And I think everyone will be really excited about some of the things that we're working on even in the future, to continue on that path of like making teams work really well together with Git.
Thanks, Justin. Dan, I'll ask you a similar question from the last round. What were some of the considerations that the dev team had to take into account for these team feature sets?
Yeah. So one of the things that we had to really think about is privacy and security. So we're obviously in order to get the information from one user to another user, we have to look at what this user is doing currently, what files are they working on, and then try to match that information or send that information to somebody else and figure out if they're working on the same files. So we were really concerned and we paid attention to privacy in terms of like, let's just only get the minimum information that we need. One of the big concerns and considerations that the team had to kind of work through with this feature is because we're actually looking at what files a user is working with on their local machine, and we have to show some of that information to a user on a different machine. We really wanted to make sure that we had the user's privacy in mind. We don't want to take any information that we don't need about the files or the path that they're working on. So we're storing as little information as we can about the file and the commit, or not the commit, but the remote that they're working on, so that we can identify that same file and same remote on somebody else's machine. So that was one of the biggest considerations that we had is privacy and security. We're encrypting all that data on the back end, making sure that none of that is visible. Okay. And we don't want to store any information that we don't need.
Thanks, Dan. Yep. And then Jeff, I did want to ask you a similar question from before as well. How do you see the Teams feature evolving over time?
Yeah, as Justin alluded to, we have a lot of really useful ideas. I mean, one of the things that has been kind of thrown around a term is just like Git is a team sport, right? We can look at, you are working with other developers on the same repository using Git, and you're trying to achieve something together most of the time, right? So we have ideas revolving around making sure some of the things that your team has decided are best practices or you want to do together can be enforced or suggested to in GitKraken, right? So we have shared settings or shared templates, like commit templates, that you could possibly automatically have distributed to your team by using GitKraken and having teams built there. An admin could go and configure those and have something accessible that when one of the developers logs in with GitKraken, oh, there's already suggesting the commit template I should use from my manager or whoever it is. We also have some other ideas in place, not only to sort of allude to something that's not out yet but coming. A lot of times teams are working on multiple repositories together, not just one. And even if it's just one, it's a project, right? So we have this idea of projects that we're kind of thinking about now and designing out. And this would be really, really easy for someone on your team to create a set of repositories on GitKraken. And when a team member gets added to that group, that team in GitKraken, and they log in with GitKraken, they can see the same repos and projects and clone them all at once, and have access to start working on the same code base that you are. Also, being able to do other things as well, pull requests and issues for multiple repos. That's just a kind of a glimpse into a bigger initiative that we're headed towards moving forward. So yeah.
And Jeff, I believe you also have a session that might tease that out even more.
A little bit, yeah.
So definitely for those who are watching, feel free to check out both Jeff and Justin's sessions. So I did have a lighter question to kind of help round things out here with our panel. So for those of you who don't know, Keef is our mascot. That's the name of the, what do you want to call it? The squid, the Kraken, the logo here.
It's a baby Kraken.
Yeah, it is Keef. And Keef loves to dress up in costumes, and we have a Keef gallery available on gitkraken.com/keef-gallery. Just wanted to see, what were each of yours favorite Keef so far? And Justin, I'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I thought about this for a minute, and I always go back to the same one, mainly because I had a sticker out of it on my laptop for the longest time. Because I loved it so much when it came out. But we have a Dia de los Muertos Keef that is all made out of bones and has a really great sombrero and some really awesome
Yeah.
colors around it. And I think that was probably my favorite one that we've come up with so far.
I love that one. Dan, how about you?
Well, so I'm biased. So I'm going to say the Suchava Keef is the best one.
How could you
but
not pick
outside
that?
of that, yeah, how can you not pick that? I think a close number two. I really like the one Justin likes. That one's good. But I think the new Baby Yoda one, what is it? The GitKraken is the way. That one's pretty cool.
Pretty good. I think also with V8, speaking of Keef changing, we have a new loading Keef screen,
with the
a new
multiple.
video. Yeah, we have a team Keef. So you have
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone plays Super Smash Brothers, but one of the developers was joking that Keef now has different color choices for when Keef fights in Smash. If that's lost on you, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just drop that on you. Jeff, what's been your favorite Keef?
Dan stole my Mandalorian reference, so I was not going to. I was going to pick that. I'm kind of like that sci-fi sort of thing, so I'll go ahead and pick Thanos Keef as my second. Love the Infinity Gauntlet and all of the whole spectrum there that we have going on.
I mean, you can still pick the Mandalorian. I like the Baby Yoda one.
Yes. It's not Baby Yoda though, Dan. You're not, you can't.
You can't spoil it. You can't spoil it. Not everyone's watched it, Jeff.
2 years
call it
later.
Baby Yoda.
Edit that out, I suppose.
And then I guess the reason I had Smash on my mind is we do have Smash Keefs, or at least there's 3 characters or 3 costumes that Keef has donned upon. It's the Link Keef, the Villager Keef, and the Captain Falcon Keef. So definitely love all 3 of these. Maybe one day we'll have a full roster. That would be a feat. But those are mine. All right. Thank you so much, y'all, for picking out your favorite Keefs and also for being part of this panel and opening up and talking about the product. I did want to open it one last time in case there's any final thoughts from our panel here.
Excited to see the CLI fly out soon.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. If anybody has questions or feedback, there's a button in the app. Feel free to click that and send us your thoughts, because we're always trying to improve GitKraken, trying to make it better. And, we need lots of voices to hear what is going well and what's not. So.
Yeah, exactly. We do listen to feedback. So it's passed around a lot in Slack channels and in meetings. And, that's the reason why we decided to start gathering public feedback. So definitely in whatever channel you find, whether that's on the public feedback forum or through the support channels that we have, or Twitter, or wherever you want, let us know what you think about the product, especially the CLI, because it is in preview and we're looking for as much feedback as we can to make that really an amazing experience. So thank you ahead of time for any feedback that you provide.
All right. And just to reiterate, anyone who's watching, you are welcome to submit your feedback directly on our feature upvote board, which is available on feedback.gitkraken.com. There is also a link to our public roadmap in case you're curious about what's coming up from the GitKraken product team. And if you do have feedback, of course, there's always the in-app feedback form in the bottom right of the UI. You can also email us directly at feedback@gitkraken.com to talk to our wonderful support team. And if you want, you can tweet us. We do see all your tweets. So don't think we don't see your tweets. We see them. Just at GitKraken, and we'll go ahead and we'd love to see your tweet and start a conversation. One more thank you to everyone here in the panel. Jeff, Justin, Dan, thanks so much. I've been your moderator, Jonathan Silva, and I think we can adjourn. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.